Welcome back to another explainer. Today we're diving into this really profound and honestly kind of heartbreaking mystery. Have you ever stopped to notice the massive difference between the absolute boundless curiosity of a baby and the anxious, frustrated struggles of a typical student sitting in a classroom? I mean, infants just devour the world, right? They're so eager to learn. But older students, they often seem completely disconnected from that natural drive. So today we're going to explore exactly why that happens and how our traditional schooling systems might actually be putting up these massive psychological roadblocks to natural learning.
So here's the big question. Why do naturally brilliant babies turn into terrified, failing students? It's a pretty heavy thought, isn't it? Literally every single child is born with this genius-level capacity to figure out their environment. They learn how to walk and talk through pure trial, error, and just sheer willpower. But you put that exact same child in a classroom a few years later, suddenly all that intelligence just seems to vanish. They get defensive, timid, afraid. Today we're going to solve this puzzle together by looking really closely at the actual mechanics behind this educational failure.
All right, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with why children fail, then look at the three pillars: fear, boredom, and confusion. After that, we'll cover these survival strategies students use, the difference between real and apparent learning, and finally, how we can return to natural learning. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Why do children fail? From fearless infants to anxious students. The massive, tragic scale of this failure, it's just hard to ignore. Normally, when we look at a failing student, we just automatically assume there's something wrong with their intellect, right? Like, oh, they're just lazy or unmotivated. But we really need to shift the blame away from the child's innate intelligence and look at the environment we put them in. Just think about it. A toddler fearlessly learns to walk. They fall down dozens of times without ever feeling a drop of shame. And yet, a bright young student, let's say a boy named Omar or a girl named Fatima, they might completely freeze up when asked a simple math question in class. The difference isn't their brain, it's the environment. Our systems are essentially shutting down the vast potential that every single child inherently possesses. They aren't failing because they lack capacity. They fail because the school environment fundamentally twists their relationship with learning. Instead of reaching out hungrily to reality, they just learn to pull back.
Moving to Section 2. Fear, boredom, and confusion. The three pillars of failure.
So we're looking at the big three reasons for this breakdown: fear, boredom, and confusion. First up, fear. Children are absolutely terrified of failing. They're scared of disappointing the anxious adults in their lives or facing humiliation in front of their peers. Second is boredom. We hand them tasks that are just dull, trivial, and make incredibly narrow demands on their huge spectrum of talents. And third, confusion. Schools have this habit of breaking the world down into these tiny, disconnected fragments of information that actually contradict what kids already know about reality. So instead of hooking into their natural desire to understand the world, schools kind of manipulate students through pressure.
I want you to really let this powerful reality sink in for a second. A scared fighter might be the best fighter, but a scared learner is always a poor learner. You simply cannot coerce true learning. It is a total illusion to think we can force children to learn by threatening them with bad grades or disapproval. Fear completely paralyzes a child's intellect and their creativity. Honestly, it essentially forces them to act stupidly just to protect themselves.
Section 3. Survival strategies in school. Playing the game. It's fascinating and kind of heartbreaking to see how students adapt when they're tossed into a system driven by fear and pressure. We basically see two types emerge. On one side, you have the thinker. This is a student who actually loves the process, right? They're totally comfortable not knowing the answer right away, and they genuinely want to figure out the problem. On the flip side, we have the producer. Now, the producer is just an answer grabber. They are laser focused on getting the right answer, strictly to please the teacher, and just get out of the danger zone. And the crazy part? Our educational system heavily rewards the producer, which basically kills real thinking.
Let's pull back the curtain and actually see this in action. Imagine a student. Let's call him Tariq. The teacher calls on Tariq to answer a really tough question. Tariq is instantly anxious. So what does he do? Well, first, he might just mumble, right? Trying to avoid committing to a firm answer. Next, he takes a wild guess, but not based on logic. He's basing it entirely on the teacher's tone of voice. He's hyper-focused on reading facial expressions. A slight frown means change direction. A little smile means getting warmer. Tariq is not thinking about the subject matter at all. He is playing a high-stakes power game just to spit out the right answer and safely escape the teacher's crosshairs.
All right, section 4, real versus apparent learning, the illusion of knowledge. Because what Tariq is doing in that classroom is clearly just a survival tactic, we really need to make a critical distinction here. You see, our educational systems routinely reward the mere illusion of knowledge. We call this apparent learning. It's cramming facts, rote memorization, regurgitating it all onto a test paper, and then completely forgetting it a week later. Now, contrast that with real learning. Real learning is when a child builds a working mental model of reality. They actually see how concepts connect to the real world. And that kind of knowledge, it lasts a lifetime because it actually means something to them. Just reflects on this devastating truth for a moment. Because schools place such an immense, overwhelming emphasis on test scores and getting the right answers, students are practically forced into valuing performance and appeasement over genuine intellectual growth. They literally learn how to pretend they know things. Why? Because actually admitting you don't understand something in that environment is actively penalized.
Finally, section 5, return to natural learning, restoring the love of discovery. But listen, it absolutely does not have to be this way. We can build a much more hopeful path forward. Here are the core principles we need to embrace to foster natural learning environments. Whether it's at home or in reformed learning spaces, we need to realize that children learn best when they aren't forcibly taught. They are naturally intensely interested in the adult world. Learning happens so much more effectively when it's embedded in real-life contexts, not just abstracted in some boring textbook, and when it's connected to an immediate, serious purpose. Basically, we have to stop acting like children won't learn unless we force them to. Because when you think about it, since we can't possibly know what knowledge is going to be most needed in the future, it's pretty senseless to try to teach it all in advance. The ultimate goal of education shouldn't be memorizing isolated facts that might be totally obsolete in a decade. Our goal has to be nurturing individuals who just love the act of discovery, people who are comfortable with the unknown, and who naturally seek truth and meaning in whatever they do. If a child loves to learn, they can learn absolutely anything the future demands of them. So I want to leave you with this thought up to chew on. As parents, as educators, as a whole society, are we going to keep playing this game? Will we continue to terrify our children into providing empty right answers? Or will we finally step back, take the fear out of the equation, and truly trust their beautiful, innate capacity to understand the world? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it challenged your perspective and sparked a desire to look at learning a bit differently. Until next time, keep asking the big questions.